Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I am going to do this particular video. Let me make sure I'm up before I do this. Guys, I've been having a lot of weird things going on with my signal, and so I apologize. Alright, it says I'm connected and it looks like my sound is okay, so let's come on. There we go. First, I want to thank everyone for coming again. That sounded kind of nasty, but I appreciate you guys coming. Anybody who supports the show, either sharing the videos, liking the videos, hell, disliking the videos, Patreon or Super Cash, however you guys support the show, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, on Wednesday, Grant Cameron is going to be on the show. That is going to be an amazing show. Grant Cameron is probably my favorite UFO guy. The man is fucking fascinating. He gets into these stories about interplay between consciousness and the phenomena itself. That is going to be a fascinating show. Hard Bastard is going to be on at 7 p.m. right after Grant Cameron. That is going to be an interesting show. There's been some huffapaloo on a video he made about Jimmy Dore. So that should be a very interesting show. Both of those shows should be good. I saw a video today, or yesterday, of Sane. Actually, I saw it today in the shower, or listened to it today in the shower. Now, Tulsi Gabbard has come out with a bill for election integrity. The point of the bill is to protect and secure America's voting systems. Now, one of the provisions of this that everyone is lefties. Yeah, lefties have been screaming about for a very long time, and that she's put into the bill with this idea of paper ballots. We don't trust those machines, and she's coming out saying, look, we need to do something about our elections. Those machines are somewhat fragile. Those machines can be hacked. We need to do something about our elections. I did a video saying I like this. I think Lee Camp did one, and I think Jimmy Dore did one after those. The kernel of this, I like. Her intentions on this, I like. Now, when I saw Debbie's video, I have to be honest, my first default position on this was, I've been screaming for paper ballots. She's talking about paper ballots. The world is good. What's the problem? And so that was my default position. My default position was not to like what Debbie was saying, because I kind of like this idea of the paper ballots. I listened to two of her vids going after how this was being constructed and so forth. And I kind of came to the conclusion that I like the bill, but Debbie has a point. You can have both. You can have both thoughts at the same time. They don't eat each other. Our electoral system, as it stands, is atrocious. I have no real trust in that particular ballot or those particular machines that they're giving you the result that they're supposed to give you the result. How can you have an election? How can you have legitimate people running your government in a representative government if you can't trust the system itself that actually get those people appointed? That's the first point. So if we're going to have some kind of change in our election system, yes. Debbie's point, however, is what's the pretext for this change? Do you know what I mean? Like it's one thing if you say our electoral system is garbage, we need to fix our electoral system. They're using a pretext of a hack. We need to protect our system against hacking. There wasn't a hack. There wasn't a hack. There is no evidence of... There is evidence of a hack, but that evidence is of the DHS hacking into a system. So NBC News has been running around screaming at the top of their lungs that there has been a hack in the system. DHS comes out saying reporting on NBC News has misrepresented the facts and confused the public with regards to the Department of Homeland Security, state and local governments' efforts to combat election hacking. First off, let me be clear. We have no evidence, old or new, that votes from the 2016 elections was manipulated by Russian hackers. NBC News continues to falsely report my comments, attempted election hacking. There hasn't been hacking. They use these terms, probe, scan, all that stuff. We have no idea what that means. There's been no hacking. There has been people going into other people's systems, however, and that was the Department of Homeland Security going into some of the state voting systems. So understand, I'm trying to create a thread here because I'm trying to make Debbie's point in both ways, or at the very least the way I see her strongest point. They're using the terms of hacking in order to come up with the pretext of changing the voting system. That's the first point. you're doing this on a pretext of something that didn't happen. That's a fair point. The Russians didn't hack us. Why aren't you using this from the internal standpoint that these things just need to change? Not necessarily because something is attacking us. I think that's the point. All of this is done on the pretext of something that didn't happen. That's the first point. The DHS was roaming around other people's systems. Let's see. Right here. The National Association of Secretaries of State want the federal officials to help resolve concerns that the Department of Homeland Security made questionable visits to a number of state computers in recent months. The organization, based in Washington, wants to make sure that we help the states in question get a quick resolution to this matter from the Department of Homeland Security, and there is a way to resolve it to everyone's satisfaction. The reason they're irked with Homeland Security is because they found evidence of Homeland Security roaming around their voting records. That's peculiar. Homeland Security gives an excuse of some kind of job thing. It's like, well, that makes no sense. I mean, you were in voting records. What did it have to do with somebody looking for employment? Yeah. Our offices investigated and found that in a handful of instances, an IP address allegedly sourced to the Department of Homeland Security has accessed our public voter information and online voter registration websites. But they found no attempt to scan, attack, or infiltrate the system, and that the visits appear to be regular web traffic. The response from Kentucky and Virginia and West Virginia was seen to bolster Homeland Security's claim that the federal contractor based in Georgia used a computer to perform routine background checks of job applicants. The contractor contacted the Secretary of State's website to check professional licensing databases housed there, Department of Homeland Security J. Johnson said in a letter. But that does not explain the contractor was on Kentucky's election website at all. Kentucky's Secretary of State does not process professional licenses, and it seems unlikely that the contractor would need to access election information. They haven't found anything from the Russians. They did find stuff for Homeland Security, DHS. Her point here, and I agree with her point on this one, at the very specific point anyway. The threat to this is not external. The threat to this is internal. Making this look like we are being attacked or we can be attacked by something else, as opposed to our election systems are fucked up. It's not an external threat. The threat is totally internal. The second part to that is, not only are they not going with the original pretext, meaning they're using a pretext that's not necessarily true. And let me start on that point. Just because the pretext is not true, that doesn't necessarily mean that the thing is bad, if that makes sense. Yeah, they're starting on a lie. But personally, I read the bill. Like, I actually went through and read the entire bill. It's not that long. It's only a few pages. Paper ballots. I like having a paper trail. Then you add this thing of machines that are not connected to the internet. They want the machines to be isolated. But then you get to the other point that Debbie makes. Well, wait a minute. Who's evaluating the voting machines to be used? Like, what organization is validating that particular vote? Who's doing it? In the thing, it says the Department of Homeland Security will validate the machines that are to be used for the vote totals, meaning you have to, for all intents and purposes, put your trust that the Department of Homeland Security is working for the best actor or for the best interests. Thing is, Debbie's main point, and I agree with her main point on this one. Like, I have two things in my head at the same time. This bill, I like. It's a governmental process. And so, yeah, they're going to use governmental services to implement the governmental process. If we're changing this system, I want to change the system. If we need paper ballots, I want paper ballots. I want the capacity for people to have a paper trail. But that's not enough. You need to go further. Look, any voting system, if everybody in the voting system worked with clean hands, they function to some degree like robots. They didn't have anything pulling and tugging on them, trying to yank them in one direction or pull them in another direction. If none of those things were there and that person was ahead in the jar, he just had to make a decision. Any voting system would probably work. Most voting systems would work in that case. It would just work in an optimum way. People wouldn't necessarily try to contort or tweak or update the process. We don't live in that world. That is not the world to which we find ourselves. And fact is, the government itself and the institutions of the government have lost a certain amount of legitimacy based on the things that the government has been doing over the past 20, 30, 40 years. People have lost trust. Giving the DHS authority on how to choose the voting mechanism is not going to assuage the fears that people have of this process. Fact is, in one election after the next, not only do we deal with gerrymandering, not only do we deal with people throwing people off the rolls, illegally, by the way, like in New York, 100,000 people thrown off the rolls in Brooklyn. Then putting around like licenses so people can vote, putting roadblocks up so people have difficulty getting to the polls and actually doing their constitutional right to vote and choose their representatives. The paper bill is nice. My point is, it doesn't go far enough. In one election after the next, when Sanders was running, the exit poll totals did not match the vote itself. Way off the vote itself. In one state, one instance after the next, the totals never added up. It got so embarrassing at a certain point, they just stopped having the exit polls. By the time they got to California, they stopped having the exit polls. They were being embarrassed by the differences between what the point total was, meaning what they said the total was, versus what the exit total was. This seems strange. A person goes in, it gives them their vote. I voted for Bernie Sanders. I come outside and tell the guy I voted for Bernie Sanders. Between the time the guy put his vote in and the 3 seconds it took him to get outside, did he forget who he was voting for? Why is there such a discrepancy between those things? You can understand that people look at this and say, I don't trust this. I don't trust this. It's not the people, or it's not the voting system itself. It's the people that's involved in the system that people don't trust. Paper ballots are nice. It doesn't go far enough. And it doesn't necessarily fix that issue of having human beings being able to monkey around with the process. Radical transparency is what's necessary. Radical transparency. Meaning, yes, paper ballots are good. Having a paper total is good. Having people to be able to watch the count take place would be even better. People being able to observe other people counting those ballots and checking those ballots would be better. A secondary count source would also be better. I'm trying to make this point. You need something to be able to evaluate that the person who you're voting for is the person that takes that seat. In fact, there are a lot of people that don't trust the voting mechanism, don't trust the voting apparatus, and damn sure does not trust DHS with the power to make those decisions. She's not wrong. Or at the very least, she's not wrong to be skeptical. Nobody is wrong to be skeptical on this. But again, that being said, I like the premise. I like the idea of what she's trying to do. But yeah, let's be honest. The voting thing needs to go a little bit beyond just paper ballots. It needs to go beyond paper ballots. So yeah, I listened to her vids and I thought to myself, I was like, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of conclusions on it, but I understand her point. And her point is sound. That original point makes sense. It does make sense. I don't have this feeling that Tulsi Gabbard is in this to fuck people over. I actually think she's trying to do the best. That being said, yeah, I don't put dark motives on her. At least not yet. At least not yet. But that being said, let's be honest. Our current voting system is a fucking mess. It's a mess in part, though, because of people. Not purely because of the system itself, but the people will conform and try to tweak and everything else. Radical transparency. Radical transparency. People need to be able to see that their vote counts. The process itself, whatever process, the way you contort or change the system, if you're going to change the system at all, needs to allow people to see this process in action. Otherwise, those people are going to lose faith in the legitimacy of the candidates who get elected. Good effort, good job, support the bill, yes. The bill needs to go further, yes. Yes. And again, I don't think people are crazy for being skeptical, so. Let's see. Hello, Jerk. Hey, I'm here. What did I miss? The stable, genius, progressive. I can't say I know or if the paper ballot would really make much of a difference regarding the fair, legit elections. They won't make a difference if they're throwing the paper ballots away. This is what I'm getting at. It needs radical transparency. This is why I say Sane Progressive is right on this very specific point. The process is going to involve human beings. You'd have to trust that those human beings are correct. Now, either you trust that they're correct, which I don't know how you can do that fully. You're talking about a political process where people are trying to take power. You shouldn't have to trust it. You should be able to see it. There should be radical transparency where you can actually see that the person who's being voted for is the person who's getting elected. If that means you need a secondary spot, meaning there's an official count and there's another count right behind that particular official count that's disassociated, however you do it. But the system itself that gets created need to get across to the American public and to the audience that this is the person who the public voted for. You're slowly losing legitimacy. You have less and less people who are voting. And even among the people that do vote, many of them don't believe that their vote counts. Or at the very least, they don't know that their vote counts. Do you honestly know when you made your vote in the last election that that vote went to the person that it was supposed to go to and it counted in the gravity that it was supposed to count? Fact is, you don't. You don't. Nobody does. That's somewhat of a problem. That's somewhat of a problem. So, I'm not going to keep this one too long. I have one or two more after this. After having my heart ripped out by Obama, words are no longer enough. Gabbard has done nearly enough to get my vote at this point. Thanks, Barack. Yeah, digital tyranny. I like Gabbard. I like Tulsi. I like Tulsi. She's spreading the Russian lie. So is Bernie Sanders. So is Bernie Sanders. All of them are spreading that Russian nonsense. Local control is better than giving control to a central agency, in my opinion. Hello, jerk. I don't like the DHS taking over. Yeah, I don't like that either. That seems bad to me. Like, what? Why does DHS? There was no hack. The only hack that took place was from the DHS. So this idea of having them take over that particular thing, yeah, Sane is right on this. I don't like that. I don't like it at all. I like the spirit of what the bill is doing in a sense of trying to revitalize the electoral process, paper ballots and that type of stuff. But again, Sane's point is, yeah, what if you have paper ballots and they throw those paper ballots away? The whole point of having the paper ballots is to make sure you have a count or total, meaning you have an idea that your vote counted. Fact is, though, you having a paper ballot doesn't necessarily mean that the vote counted. It just means that you have a paper ballot. The system itself, again, getting back to my original point, there needs to be radical transparency. None of the stuff where people are throwing ballots away. The public itself needs to be able to observe what's taking place. And there needs to be a secondary process in order to evaluate the original vote. If you're going to do it right. If you're going to do it right. So, yeah. It's funny. I listened to I think 2 of her vids. And I said, my original tenor on this, my default was, our election system is already a mess. It's like, you know, what are you going to do? Fuck it up worse. And I thought to myself, I was like, Debbie does have a point here. I don't necessarily agree with the overarching thing, but Debbie does have a point on these issues. There's no reason to just accept and to trust what these guys are doing. That's the first point. They're doing this on a pretext of a lie, meaning they're acting like there's Russian hacking and everything else. That's also not true. They haven't been able to demonstrate it. And C, paper ballots in and of themselves is not necessarily a full-on protection from bad intents or bad intentions. It's not. You walking away with a paper ballot feels good, but how do you know that particular paper ballot got counted? This is kind of my point. The human element in the process is the thing that needs to be scrutinized. Yes, the process is good, but also you need something to be able to scrutinize the process to make sure the process worked the way it's supposed to. Paper ballots in and of themselves are nice, but paper ballots in and of themselves don't solve the issue. That's her main point. I think her main point is right. So, Banga Renga. So why are you supporting someone pushing something you know is a lie? I don't know if she knows that's a lie. That's kind of my point. Like, do I know that Sanders thinks the Russia thing is a lie? I don't think the Russia thing is true. I think the Russia thing is a lie. Do I think they're playing this purely for political ends? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm stuck in this position of not knowing. That being said, if you ask me why do I support this particular legislation, because our election system is a mess. It's already a mess. Open source software and voting systems, Stoner Corso. Yeah, and like Debbie said, that software is going to be approved by DHS. That's also in her document. I'm putting her documents at the bottom so you can see it for yourself. You can read the bill. The open source software is supposed to be evaluated by the Department of Homeland Security. That software is not supposed to be able to connect to the internet. Fair enough, that's great. But fact is, the Department of Homeland Security is going to be the determining factor on what software is added into the machine and what machines they're using. You're stuck in the process of trusting this kind of some entity outside of yourself. This is not going to breed trust. That's my point. It doesn't breed trust. The way they're doing this is not necessarily going to make people feel more secure in their voting systems. Probably even less. Let me say it this way. I support one part of the bill, the paper ballots, but those things should be hand counted. And not just hand counted, they should have people overseeing them doing that count. And that count should be a secondary count on top of that to make sure that these counts coincide with one another by a factor of just a few percentage points to make sure that the vote is accurate and the vote is correct. Otherwise, you have no way to evaluate that system. Me walking away with a sticker is great. How do I know that sticker was actually added to the vote total? You get a number at the end, you have your sticker. Oh, I got my number. It says I voted for Bernie Sanders. How do you know? How do you know? How do you know? In one election after the next, in the primaries, Sanders was losing in these magnificent numbers in comparison to what the exit totals were coming out as. One state after the next, after the next, after the next. It would always point in one direction, towards Bernie Sanders being better. Meaning he may lose by 10, but the exit totals had him losing by maybe 2. I remember when New York came out. New York came out with this magnificent total, when the exit totals came out to be much less. In one state after the next, these magnificently different exit totals. That's somewhat peculiar to me. I mean, after all, it would be as if the people who came out and just voted for the person don't remember who they voted for. People don't trust these systems. There's other testimony where the person is standing looking at the voting totals showing that the machines were coming out with different results. I think this was in Arizona. They were literally standing there saying, it changed the vote. The vote is wrong. The people were changing the exit totals. How do you know this, ma'am? Are your maths? You know, it's a Lee Camp video. It's an amazing video. Look, my point is, the problem here is trust and legitimacy of the vote total. The paper ballot thing is nice. That's why I support it. I like it. I think it moves the ball forward. The DHS thing, I don't trust. I don't trust. They're trying to centralize the voting apparatus, and I don't necessarily trust the centralization of the voting apparatus. The fact is, if you actually want to fix it, and if you actually want people to believe in it, it needs to be transparent, not under the auspices of the Department of Homeland Security. That's my point. Debbie doesn't even believe in change through voting, no matter how much we improve the system. Drago Wana, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I disagree with her on that. Chill Cat, Amazon to take control of voting. Oh, that would be hard. That would be hard. Good Winslow, but machines needs to be checked. Well, right, the Department of Homeland Security is supposed to be the ones who checks them. Look, any change that we get, if we're talking about within the system itself, you're going to need some kind of means, some kind of configuration to actually articulate that particular change. In our system, we have this thing of voting, this thing of picking a representative. It quells public dissent and everything else. If you're going to have a system like that, it should work. It should work. Otherwise, people are going to lose legitimacy. Yes, to be fair, Debbie came up with her conclusion before she had any evidence. Hello, jerk. Well, yeah, I mean, but she's against this stuff in general. So, but no, I saw her vid. I just thought to myself, I was like, well, let me read the bill first. So I just read the bill, and the majority of it I liked. I thought to myself, that's not bad. Good. We should have a paper trail. Good. We should have this. Good. We should have that. And I thought to myself, well, yeah. I mean, if you're being somewhat skeptical or cynical about it, you can find certain things wrong with it. That's true. And yeah, the pretext of the bill is off. That's also true. Meaning they're saying they're doing this for something that didn't take place. That's also true. But our voting system currently is horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. So, if we could change that for the better, I want to change that for the better. But no, I don't like the Department of Homeland Security taking over the process. Hand counts. It takes longer, but hand counts. Otherwise, you're always going to use a machine, and always some machine is going to have to be evaluated, etc., etc., etc. So, I'm just saying, if you're going to do it right, and make sure people believe in the system. And the only way you're going to get people to believe in the system is radical transparency within the system itself. Assume that the people in the system are bad actors, and design your system in a way to weed out bad actors. The public needs to know that who they voted for is real. That's my only point. That's my only overriding point. I guess I'm saying, after watching Debbie's video, I don't necessarily agree with her in premise, but I do agree with what she's saying as a core. How can you trust the process? The system is nice, but the issue is the process and the people that are involved in the process. If those people are trying to contort or tweak or alter the system in some way, this still allows them to, tweak and alter the system in some way. She's making a point that this does not necessarily solve the issues with the election system. And she's right. She's right. At least on that point. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't move the ball forward. And I gotta be honest, I have a hard time believing they're gonna pass Tulsi's bill. So, but we'll see. Does the end justify the means? It depends on what it is. It depends on what it is. Save the world, save the cheerleader, save the world. The only chance is for the left to come together, and that does not mean come together with corporate Democrats. Steve Benson, agreed. I absolutely agree with that one. Agreed. 2 separate bills. Debbie was confused. Oh, okay. Well, I read the bill, so personally, I thought the bill was okay. I just don't think it goes far enough. I just don't think it goes far enough. I guess my feeling is, if you're going to make a bill, but could you say our electoral system is a little screwy, is screwed up, and the point is people to trust the electoral system. It's not that people think they're foreign actors in this. People are talking about the people who are there in the intra-party politics from the two-party system and not trusting that these guys are giving them a fair shot. This is internal. Nothing to do with Russians, nothing to do with the Chinese. These are internal people. The problem with the electoral process are the people that are involved in the electoral process. It's not hackers. It's not hackers. So, I'm not going to keep this video too long. I just wanted to respond to Debbie's video on this. She sounded like she was alone in the wilderness. And fact is, even though I may agree with the bill, I get her point. I totally get her point. I was in the shower. I was like, yeah, maybe. And then there's something she said, and I was like, yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. It's like you're starting this on a pretext of a lie. That was a good point. And as she went on, she was going and digging into the details, and I thought to myself, yeah, she's kind of right on this. They're doing something, but this is not really solving the issues that we were being addressed with in the last election. Now, I don't necessarily cast dark motives on the people involved in this. I don't cast dark motives on Tulsi Gabbard on this. But if the point of this is really to fix the electoral system, then do it right. So, J. Scott, Debbie is not right conflating 2 separate bills. I don't know the 2 bills she was talking about. Independent outsider, Debbie is right on this one. I think she's partially right on this one. Partially. I'm being very specific when I say this, because I don't agree with the overall sentiment. I mean, my thought is I like the fact that Tulsi is pushing this bill. In fact, I can show you the bill. Let's see. Let's flip it over. To amend the Help America Vote Act of 2002 to require a voting system used in elections for federal office to produce a voter-verified ballot of each vote cast on the system and for other purposes. Be it enacted by the Senate, House of Representatives of the United States of America, Congress assemble. This act may be cited as Securing America's Elections Act of 2018. Sense of Congress is the sense of Congress that, according to the Department of Homeland Security, there were attempts to hack the election infrastructure of 21 states during 2016 elections. The failing security and vulnerabilities of our national election infrastructure were later confirmed and highlighted by the hacking community in a report issued September 2017 after DEFCON 525 conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. In light of these findings, the government must act with all deliberate purpose to ensure that the integrity of the elections of the United States is protected against hackers. Now, the thing is, if Donald Trump leaves Syria, I don't care why he left Syria. Like, the argument that some of these lefty news networks were making was Donald Trump is a robot because he's being controlled by the mob, and he's an animatronic figure and it just moved around in the office. If he was anatomically controlled and he left Syria, I would say good fucking job, Donald Trump left Syria. I don't care why. I'm glad he left. Same thing with this. Even if they're using a pretext of a lie to push this, like if Tulsi Gabbard is looking at this saying, hey, this gives me the option of doing something now that these people are believing something that's not necessarily true, I'll take it. I don't care. I don't care. So that's the first point. I don't care if the pretext of this bill is off. I care about the results of the bill. In this case, I like the idea of voter verified paper ballots. The voter system should require production of a voter verified ballot with the voters and be created by or made available for inspection and verification by the individual voter before his vote is cast and counted. For purposes of the subclause, a voter verified paper ballot includes, but is not limited to, a paper ballot marked by the voter for the purpose of being counted by hand or read by an optical scanner or similar device. A paper ballot prepared by the voter to be mailed to an election official. A paper ballot created through the use of a ballot marking device or system, or a ballot produced by a touchscreen or other electronic voting machine, so as long in each case the voter is permitted to verify the ballot in paper form in accordance to the sub paragraph. I agree with that. I have no qualms with that statement. I would prefer it just to be hand counted. Fair enough. I'm not necessarily going to get that. I do want it to be verifiable after the fact. And the only thing, honestly, I would add to that would be a second verification system. I don't like this idea of one centralized verification system. I want multiples. I want those people to be able to say, this is my tally, go to somebody else, give them the exact same tally. You guys walk out, the world is good. One can be checked by verifying the other. I don't care what the system is. I just want the system to have a self-verification process where the public can see what's taking place. This is a start. It's not giving me everything I want, but again, it's a start. That's why I support the legislation, even though I understand the faults of it. The voting system should provide the voter with the opportunity to correct any errors made by the system in a voter verified paper ballot before permanent vote verified paper ballot is preserved in accordance with the clause. The vote system shall not preserve the voter verified ballots in any manner that makes it possible at all, time after ballot has been cast, to associate a voter with the record of the voter's vote. The voter verified paper ballot in accordance with the clause should be used as the official ballot for purposes of any recount or audit conducted with respect to the federal office in which the voting system is used, and should be preserved in accordance with the regulations promulgated by a commission to establish criteria for the proper verification and retention of the official ballots in the election. Each paper ballot produced pursuant clause should be suitable for a manual audit equivalent to that of a paper ballot voting system in accordance with the method described in subparagraph. They go into the methods of audits and everything else. The interesting part is, there are a few interesting parts. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but there is one part that gets into the machines that I thought was interesting. They're sending funds to the state, money to the state in order to pull this off. Engaging in a business and maintaining open source software to develop, certify. And yeah, they're talking about the Department of Homeland Security to secure the votes, or to secure the machines to be used. But I'm putting this in the bottom so you guys can read. Read it for yourself, make your own determinations. Yeah, read it for yourself. Come to your own conclusions. My conclusion is there's some good things in it. There's some things I don't particularly like. And yes, it doesn't necessarily go far enough to give the public a secure election where they look at this and think to themselves, yes, I have a reasonable certainty that my vote is being counted and the way my vote should be counted. So, I guess I partially agree with her. I understand where she's coming from. Can't blame her in the least. But I personally consider this to be somewhat progress. Just not fully in the direction that I want it. So, I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to bang on it. Blockchain would be awesome with verified votes, Dragowana. Yeah, providing that we can, maybe. Look, I think Debbie would agree with this. And I think most people would agree with this, most lefties. We just want something what we know is real and honest. Meaning the process itself, it should be able to be evaluated. Now, oftentimes they don't like to have these secondary recounts and everything else. So, even if you have a paper tally, it doesn't necessarily mean that that tally was counted, if that makes sense. The point in this is not purely just the capacity to vote, not purely the capacity to hold on to the vote, the capacity to watch and observe those votes being counted. Yeah, I'm more in the camp of a hand count, even if the hand count takes a while. At the very least, having a secondary recount to understand whether or not the first recount is correct. So, open source is blockchain voting, J. Scott. No reason to apologize. Debbie was wrong, factually wrong in her premise. Well, I don't think I was apologizing. I mean, I don't think I was apologizing. I guess I'm saying two things, but both of the things are true, if that makes sense. The original premise of it doesn't go far enough, I agree with. There needs to be more. The second premise, I kind of agree with. I guess I disagree with the overall premise that nothing should be done and all this other stuff. But from the standpoint of being somewhat skeptical of the process, yeah, I do agree with that part. I think you should be skeptical of the process. When Jared Chardon releases his new piece on Flint, will you read it and talk about it? Yeah, I guess I would. Whenever he releases it, I'll check it out. Ashton. Alright guys, I'm going to end this. I have one or two that I want to do after this one, so you guys have a good night. Wait, let me make sure. Okay, yeah. Alright guys, have a good one.